G'day guys, welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 94, new year, new episode, January 1 for you guys anyway. We've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be taking a look at the team with the most amount of injuries so far in the pre-season, and we're also going to be breaking down a lot of AFL fantasy news, going over my brother's team, looking at the best mid-price players and much more. So let's roll the intro and get straight into it.
And then Reagan from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Reagan!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be more than just AFL this next season.
It's at the handle at the back, Nick Dankos to get the pies home! He's done it!
So my brother, guys, is with me as always, and we'll look at your team in a minute. But I've already seen a couple of you guys actually joining the AFL Fantasy League. And if you look in the top right-hand corner right now, perfectly pointed at it, you can see the code you guys can join. It's a open league this season, so anyone can join. And we're going to have a huge group of you guys because we've grown so much. I think we times 6 our subscriber count. So I want this league to be filled with people. So when you guys all lose I win, it's going to be so embarrassing for all ears. So hopefully there's no top 100 people who get in there and just try to win the prize off of us. That would be very rude. We'll also be doing a tipping comp as well, but the AFL tipping comp thing hasn't opened yet. So when that opens, we'll let you guys know and you guys can join that. But anyway, new year, new episode, new everything. We're new people, apparently. Yeah. Haven't seen a lot of AFL news come out as of late, but we'll probably do a world sports segment later in the episode. But you're looking at your AFL fantasy team. We'll look at that in a minute. I think you've copied most of mine.
No, I think this is the first year I haven't really
tried to copy me.
I didn't really look at your team to start off with.
Yeah.
I looked at your team, but then I was like, well, I'll just do my team and see what it's like. So
yeah, I think I've noticed early on that forward lines are going to be very similar.
It's like last year when
I think there's a little bit of difficulty.
There was a bit of difference, but yeah, it's just getting a little harder at the moment than.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very much 8 or 9 forwards are going to be chosen out of the 6 that you need to pick from.
Yeah, you're looking hard at pre-season, who's shining and who's changed positions and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, looking at a couple of pre-season news, just want to take a look at this one quickly. So at the moment, it is North Melbourne who have the biggest injury toll in the pre-season so far with 11 players on the list. One of them includes Griffin Lowe, a couple of other ones as well. Interesting to see a lot of people are expecting that North will be on the rise a bit this year.
Well, they have to, don't they?
Well, you would think so. They have to do something a little bit better than what they've done previously. But 11 players on the injury list at this stage. It's obviously very early on, so they don't have to be worried too much about it just yet. But if it gets a little bit closer and they've got an injury toll in the double digits, it's not going to be the greatest. I think they've got a pretty good recruitment. So a lot of the players that are on the injury list apparently aren't from new recruits, where I think a lot of their teams can be filled up this year. People like Jack Darling, Caleb Daniel, Luke Parker, and the likes like that, even Phil O'Sullivan. I feel like they'll be okay, but yeah, I think players like Griffin Logue is a really important one to help shore up their defence.
I think he was a big loss last year when he went down.
Yeah, because it felt like Charlie Comben was definitely holding up that tall defence, and they even moved him forward for a stint, which I didn't really like.
I think pre-season, he's going to have a full time down defence.
I think with the likes of Jack Darling coming to the team and what was it, one of the Whitlock brothers? I think it was Jack Whitlock who went to North Melbourne. Matt Whitlock. Yeah. So I think that they'll play Comben down back, and I think that's his best position.
Yeah.
So I think if they can get him down there with Griffin Logue, they can definitely look a little bit better down there. Toby Pink's on the rookie list. They played him a bit up forward last year, which I didn't really like either. I don't think he really played forward much, to be honest, before he went to North Melbourne. I know when he played for Glenelg, he was the Sandford Australian team of the season before he went to North Melbourne again. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see how North Melbourne go next year. I don't know. For me personally, I know I picked them pretty low on the ladder with only a couple of wins, but they're bringing in all these recruits, but I just don't see a lot of improvement coming because they just haven't shown me any sort of faith in a long time. So, I mean, I'd love to see it. I want to see them improve. I don't want the league to... I mean, what has it been the last 2 years now? 3 years now, really. Just take out Richmond for a second. North Melbourne and West Coast have been the bottom bottom 4 every year for nearly 3 years now, or 4 years. Like, you want to see it changing around a bit to see those teams improving and other teams going down to, like, show a little bit of variety. But at the moment, it feels like 16 teams are like a competition. The other two were easy beats for a lot of 2023 and a little bit of 2024 as well. North Melbourne did have a bit of a resurgence, and West Coast looked okay at times, but towards the end of the season, both of them were just hanging on by a thread and got some pretty big smashings in the end.
Yeah.
So let's move on to a bit of AFL fantasy news. So before we get into your team, I want to take a look at some news about the buys going into next season and the mid-price players. So first we'll start with the buys. So looking at the early buys for the AFL season, of course, with every team in the opening round, we'll have a bye between rounds 2 to 4. So they're trying to get them out a little bit easier this year than I think it was 2 to 6 last season.
Yeah, they've also said because of Anzac Day being on Wednesday last year, it was a bit harder to do it, so they had to spread them around a bit. So they've tried to condense it before gather round in round 5.
Okay. So looking at the early buys, there is between rounds 2 to 4, like I said. In AFL Fantasy, you will get the best scores from 18 players. So that's obviously pretty self-explanatory. If you have 18 players that score over 50 and 2 players that score under 45, then obviously the 2 scores at 45 will get deleted and you'll only get the 18 best scores. So they're pretty normal. That's how leagues will happen as normal from head-to-head. So every single head-to-head league, which doesn't really bother us for our competition. We may add a head-to-head league as we get closer to the season. So then, there's 18 of us. But yeah, essentially those will be head-to-head matchups no matter what. You can turn them off in the mid-season buys. Yeah. So you can not play in those rounds, which are between 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So that's 5 rounds where there will be buys in the mid-season. Again, that's best of 18. And like I said, you can turn off the matchups for those 5 rounds. However, the difference here is the early buys, you can only have 2 trades. In the mid-season buys, you can have 3 trades. So the mid-season is when you get a lot more of trying to push towards, your best team for the finals part for head-to-head, and especially towards the end of the season. So looking at it, the buys for next season, I'm a little bit disappointed that teams like the Crows don't get a buy until round 15. Meanwhile, teams like the Gold Coast will have 2 buys before then. And Collingwood will have 2 buys before then as well. I think surely they can set it up where you can have buys a little bit earlier than that. Yeah. So the teams who had, like, for example, Port Adelaide are getting a buy in round 12. And, surely they could be moved to, well, not them, but I mean, surely they could swap the Crows and the Gold Coast around to then allow it to have a little bit more betterness. I mean, I think there was a couple of teams last year who didn't get a buy until round 15. Yeah. But then the Swans and that were having 2 buys before then. Yeah, they were saying like, we want to make the fixture more fair. It's like, well, it's not really, you didn't really do that, did you, again? Yeah, I don't think it's obviously very hard to make it fair when there's 18 teams and you want to play 24 games in a season. Yeah. But I think when Tassie do come in, I don't know how much easier it's going to be. It's either you've got to pay... I feel like the only way you make it fair is if you play everyone once and then you play your rival twice. But even then, there's examples of playing a rival twice would make it easier for you. For example, if Fremantle played West Coast twice, you would assume that that would be easier. But, I think they even lost to West Coast last season. So, even that's sometimes fair, but sometimes not. Who plays North Melbourne twice? Who plays Richmond twice? That's probably an advantage to that team. So, I mean, especially when you're playing Victoria, like, you could say that Collingwood are rivals with Carlton, but they're also rivals with Essendon, and, that's where it gets a little bit difficult to call it out. But I want to take a look at the mid-price players. So I'm looking at players between about $850 to $500. That's where I'm thinking around mid-price is for me. So I'm looking at 15 players here. So I've picked the top 15 best mid-price players in order of their price.
Lowest to highest.
Highest to lowest. So from like 850 closest to then 500 the lowest. Okay, so I'll go lift them all, and then if you've got anyone, you can let me know. But number 1, I think, is a pretty self-explanatory one, is Will Ashcroft, 843. Perfect price. We obviously saw in the final series how well he did. I think he's pretty much going to be picked in most teams. So Will Ashcroft's number 1. 2, maybe a bit of a surprising one. I've seen some people take him, but Trent Rivers, 841, defensive mid. I think he'll be playing if he does get the midfield minutes that we're hoping for a lot of us to see.
Yeah, that's dependent on Oliver and Petrarca.
Yeah, if they want to play a little bit more Petrarca forward, but I think he's definitely an option. To especially look at in the pre-season, I think that's one to watch. Jordan Sweet at 8.38. Now, that is a bit high, but towards the end of the season for Port Adelaide, when he did play sole ruck, he was very good. He was averaging, I think, over the 90s. So he's a little bit lower price than the likes of, the Gorns and that sort of ones as well. But this is purely on the fact if he plays a sole ruck. If you see Ivan Soldo in that team in round one, I think you avoid him at all costs.
Yeah, 100%.
Number 4 is Jaden Short, 8.25. Was a pretty low average scoring for him last season, but with Daniel Rioli gone, one of the experienced players playing at halfback, I think he's going to be used a lot.
Yeah.
He's definitely been a high price pick so far, so keep an eye on Jaden Short in defence. Isaac Rankin at number 5, 8.18 price. I think he's definitely one to look at because I think that he's going to be playing a little bit of midfield next season as well.
I think it's the fact is that he's 8.18. He missed a lot of football, and in my opinion, he's very high. But there's not a lot of options, so you might have to be able to pick him in. Like you said, he's going to play midfield, some sort of role in there this year.
Yeah, I think that he's going to get some sort of midfield role, so they need to get some sort of pace through there. I think he's definitely going to be the option. It'll be either him and Josh Rochelle, maybe Sid Draper as well. Then we've got Clayton Oliver at number 6. This is a very interesting one because he's priced at $7.97. We've seen how good he can be, and we've seen that he's been one of the top AFL fantasy players for a very long time. But last season was a huge drop-off.
Yeah.
So it's a watch pre-season at this stage. I did have him in the team for an extent. I've swapped him in and out. I think at the moment I'm going to just hold off. But if he has a good couple of pre-season games for Melbourne and playing predominantly midfield, looks good, there's good talks around him, he'll be in my team towards round 1. He
doesn't play opening round, does he?
No, Melbourne don't play opening round. So.
I will probably hold off until at least round 2, maybe 3, because obviously he's low for his standards. So you could, if one of your players gets injured or if he starts performing really well, you probably get him by round 2 or 3 to avoid to see how good he starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be him. And the one next to it is probably another one that you could look at is Will Day, number 7 that I've got here. $7.60 price. I think he's definitely a one to watch. Yeah. His problem is he can find a way to get 30 touches but only score about 80.
Yeah, that was my problem last year when I've been to pick him up. He would get 25, 30 disposals, but he wouldn't get a good 100. He would scrape for a 90.
Yeah, it's kind of struggle to get those marks, kicks, and then the tackles as well. But yeah, because getting kick marks are obviously your big priority when getting those cheap touches. Because you can get a lot of clearances, but if you're not getting those marks around the ground, 30 touches, a lot of those touches will be handballs. So I mean, if you get 30 touches, but only have 20 of them handballs, you're getting only 40 points.
Yeah,
and then you're struggling to get the hundreds. That's where players like Clayton Oliver was at his best when he's going to get halfback, trying to get those touches. Lachie Neale was usually pretty good at it as well. So, especially if someone, I'm not thinking more of a Jack Steele type who's a lot more of a tackler.
Yeah.
Will Day probably can add that to his game a bit more, but I think he's a lot more better with his polish and his skills rather than his grunt tackling. So I think that's where he can improve, just getting those marks and handballs, marks and around that halfback line because he's such a good user. Callum Mills at number 8. I'm a little bit cautious on this one because I think that if he plays midfield, he can definitely go there. The question is, does he play midfield or defence? And I had him in the team at first. I'm going to watch his pre-season games, but I also think that McKercher, he's about 850, so he's a little bit higher. He's over 100k more. But if you got that 100k, I would personally chuck it on McKercher because I think that he's going to be playing that halfback role that Sheasel was playing, first season, halfway through second season.
Yeah.
Have you got Cal Mills so far though?
Yeah, I've started with him. I'm with you that there's another, like you said, I don't have Jaden Short at the moment, so I could swap him for that. And,
yeah, that's another option too.
And do it that way. So it'll just depend on how, like you said, pre-season goes because also he is injury prone.
Yeah, the thing is about Cal Mills as well is the fact that he is, a couple of years ago, was one of the highest priced players in AFL fantasy because he scored so well. I think he was one of the averaged over 110 or something playing in Sydney's midfield in 2023. So I thought maybe it was 2022. It was one of those. But yeah, he was very, very good. So that's definitely the potential that he has. And being as a defender, that could be massive. After that, I've got Jack Macrae. So again, this is a track the pre-season because we've seen the potential of Jack Macrae. He is an option because he's a forward. And it depends on where St Kilda want to play him. If they play him through the guts and he gets some good games in pre-season or early rounds, he's a must-have, I think, because the forward line's so hard to structure, I think, with not many options. Like I said, there's only about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
But if you want to pick Jack Macrae, he's an option there. I've got Isaac Rankin at this stage for that player, basically. You've got Isaac Rankin as well, I believe.
Yeah. Like we saw when he was playing at the Dogs consistently, he would get 20 plus every week. And he would get a good score.
He was one of the players getting those kick marks.
Yeah, he would do that. And I think a couple of years ago, you had him when he would score when he was averaging over 100.
Yeah. And he's not really when he's played midfield for a lot of his time, he'll be very popular this year, but he hasn't been the most popular person to pick from.
No.
But then he is very consistent. So if he gets to his best at St Kilda, he'll get that consistent 90, 100 every week. And for a forward, especially that early to mid-season, that's gold.
Yeah.
So he's a wait and see, but I think he's definitely a big option there. One of a bit of a surprise one that not really people have talked about is Darcy Wilson for St Kilda. I've got him in here. He's 6'71". He's a forward mid, which is why I like to look at him a lot. He's only 15 more than the next player we'll talk about in Filippo. But I think that Darcy Wilson has a huge ceiling here because I think that he plays off that wing role. I think that Filippo just jumps in front of him on likeliness. But if you want to pick for someone a little bit different, I think Darcy Wilson is a decent get. I think that he had a very good 2K time trial again. I think he won it in his first season as drafted. He won it again for St Kilda. So I think he's in for a massive year. And he has longevity as well. He played, I think, every game for St Kilda last season too. Or he definitely played the majority.
He played 20 plus. He played 20 plus games.
Yeah, so I think Darcy Wilson's a definite look at, wait and see. Being a forward mid as well, I think that's definitely a good look at. But then Filippo is probably the one that takes over, which is my next player. He's 15k less. He's got such a high ceiling. We saw how good he ended his season. He's tracking really well in the pre-season. I think he's going to go midfield for the Saints.
Yeah.
They need help with... Jack still needs some help in there. And they've obviously got Jack Macrae recruited as well. But I think they do want to put some youth through there. So I think Filippo is probably the better option. But if you do want to look at a difference, I think Darcy Wilson's definitely a good look at. After that, we've got Bailey Smith, of course. 5.98. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
He should be the most popular player.
He is at the moment. Yeah. So forward mid, 5.98. He'll be playing midfield for Geelong. At the very least, he's playing wing. Isaac Cumming. He is only a midfielder. But 5.75, a lot of people are comparing him to the Riley Bonner of last year.
Yeah.
They're expecting him to take a lot of the kick into the Crows. He's going to be playing off of halfback. He has a pretty good run of averaging around 80 when he's at his best for the Giants. I think at the Crows, I don't think it's exactly a lock just yet, for me personally, because I think he plays very much like a Mitch Hinge. So I think that's definitely a look at. And obviously Brodie Smith is still there. So that's the question, if he's going to get that role, or he may even play a little bit higher up the ground as a wing player. But I think halfback's going to be his option. He's definitely a player to look at, but I think you just wait and see that. Again, he's a pre-season watch.
Yeah.
Look at those first couple of pre-season games, see where his role is. And if he's taking those kick-ins and he's playing off a halfback, I think you lock him in that defence. But if you want to if he does play a little bit more wing and doesn't get a lot of those touches in the back half, I think he's probably a void for now.
I think I'm going to avoid him just at the moment. He's, like you said, I don't know where his role's going to be in that team. And to be honest, I'm struggling to see how he's just a midfielder anyway.
Yeah. I think he didn't get a lot of games last year for the Giants. So when he did play, he played as that string of midfielders. So I think that's where he's going to be looked at. Next one, and he's 50k less. He's in defence. This guy's a lock for me, Kitty Coleman.
Yeah.
5.21 as a defender. We saw how good a season he had towards the end of 2023. He was ready to blitz it in 2024, injured his ACL in opening round, and was not seen again for the rest of the season. But this guy's got the touch, the skill. Brisbane, the fact that they won the premiership without this guy, I thought it was almost gone. He is such a good user of the footy. He's so clean. He's going to be getting 25 touches a week, I think. I don't think Connor McKenna's going to have that role.
No.
And I think that... Yeah, I think he's definitely a lock for me. I think this guy could be one of the better defenders of the year.
Yeah, he'll be the comeback kid, I reckon.
Yeah, I think he'll be great. And then the last one here is Caleb Daniel. So last year at the Bulldogs, got shafted by Luke Beveridge for, like a lot of people would say. He played, I think, 15 games where he either was sub or got subbed out throughout the season. Didn't play his halfback role that he's used to, and that's why he's priced so low at 5.14. Another lock for me in the forward line. He's a forward mid, 5.14 price. That is an absolute lock for a guy who can average at least 90, if not 95.
On that North list, the one thing that's a question mark for him if he's going to play off halfback is the Colby McKercher role, because obviously McKercher was doing the kick-ins at this, and that's what Daniel would do off halfback. So
the problem is as well, and something that's not really talked about too much, which I think people know, but they don't really talk about it, is the fact that both of them are very short.
Yes,
and they both can't play in defence because they're just going to get scored against. So I think maybe McKercher will move wing as well, which is what Sheasel kind of did. And I think Daniel's that lock-in defensive 50 almost.
I just hope that they don't chuck him up for a half forward. I just hope that they don't do that with Daniel and chuck him up half forward.
I don't think they're going to, because I think when Daniel got signed to North Melbourne, he said in an interview that they want to play him in halfback. And I think that's what they will do, because they want that experienced halfback user. So I think he will go to halfback. I think he's definitely a lock. Again, watch him on the preseason, but I think for now you just lock him in at this stage. But yeah, let's just quickly go over that list again. So that is the top 15 mid-priced AFL fantasy players. Will Ashcroft at 8.43 is number 1. Trent Rivers at number 2 at 8.41. Jordan Sweet at 8.38. Jaden Short at 8.25, Isaac Rankin at 8.18, Clayton Oliver at 7.97, Will Day at 7.60, Callum Mills at 7.59, Jackson McRae at 7.32, Darcy Wilson at 6.71, Mateus Filippo at 6.56, Bailey Smith at 5.98, Isaac Cumming at 5.75, Kitty Coleman at 5.21, and then Caleb Daniel at 5.14. So I think that's pretty good. I think if you want to pick mid-price players around that mark, a lot of those players are in my team.
Yeah.
I've got Ashcroft, I've got Rankin, I've got Oliver at this stage, I've got Filippo, I've got Smith, I've got Coleman, and I've got Caleb Daniel. So that's 7 of those 15 there. And a lot of them could definitely be in at that stage. But in saying that, let's have a look at your team going into next season. So we already looked at my team a couple of weeks ago. The video's out now. A few people have already responded to it. I think I put out a TikTok as well looking at the team. But let's look at yours.
So this is the winning team, I reckon, easily off the bat.
The winning. Yeah. So you're winning the car.
So
it
will change about 50,000 times before round 1.
Yeah.
Last year I regretted not getting him early, and I'm going to start with him this year. I'm going to go defense. Lockie Whitfield, very high.
Yeah.
And then I am going to go with Jack Sinclair.
Yep.
They're both over $1 million, which is sort of annoying. I might change Sinclair, to be honest. Trent Rivers, Callum Mills, Kitty Coleman, and then Travalia.
So that's an interesting defense. So you've got 2 pretty high priced, 3 pretty mid price, and then 1 low defender.
Yeah.
So I think that's not bad. I don't mind the choices. I think that will be interesting this year, because I think a lot of people are going pretty expensive on their defense, because last year defense was a very high priority.
I think that since they changed the rule of that if you kick from kick-outs, I think that's changed everything in the way that you can get an easy, cheap 3 points from your kick-outs.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So,
and a lot of plays now are like rebound off defense as well.
Yeah.
So if you're playing off half back and you're a good player, you got to have the foot skills, and you get a lot of the footy.
Yeah.
So I get that point. What are you looking at your midfield for?
So start with Zach Merritt, Luke Davis-Uniacke, Will Ashcroft, Jordan De Goey, Sam Doherty, Sid Draper, Levi Ashcroft, and Josh Smiley.
Okay, so you've got Zach Merritt, which is like the high-priced player.
Yeah.
And then you've got Luke Davis-Uniacke. That may be an interesting one, because I've had him for a few years. I've never really used him too much. I never really prioritized him as a $1 million+ player he is, isn't he? Or is he just under?
He's just under. He's 984.
Okay, so 984. It's pretty high. So you've gone a little bit prioritize the top player is Zach Merritt and Luke Davis-Uniacke, and then you've gone some mid-price players.
Yeah.
So Jordan De Goey and Sam Doherty. I think Sam Doherty, he would 100% be in my team if he was in defence. In midfield, I've got it. He's definitely a wait and see. I just don't know this year with Carlton because they did pick up Nick Haynes as well. So they've got Nick Haynes, they've got Adam Sard. I think, and they've also Nick Newman. Nick Newman, and also Ollie Hollins has been talked about playing off halfback this year. So Sam Doherty, I'll be interested to see where he does play in the team. He will obviously be in the team somewhere. But yeah, it's interesting that he's a midfielder. It's so annoying because you want to play him in defence. And I feel like, I mean, we've obviously seen the ceilings that he can hit.
Yeah.
Jordan De Goey, I did have him a look at. I think he's a wait for me because I think maybe he'll play a little bit of forward this year. But
yeah, it'll be interesting with that with all the players coming back from injuries and their recruits that they've got. So that will be interesting to wait and see.
Yeah, so I think that your rookies in midfield are pretty much similar to most people. Draper, Ashcroft and Smiley.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm going to kind of lean for as well. I think that Draper probably wouldn't have been there, but the fact of all the talk about his pre-season, I think he's a lock for me.
Yeah.
Ashcroft, obviously.
The thing is with Ashcroft is that will Fags want to wait and see? And will where is his role going to be? Because I doubt they'll chuck him straight in the guts. So,
I think that he will be used pretty early. I think that as long as he has a good pre-season, they say he's going to be almost as good as his brother, if not better. His brother, was used in he was almost a revelation in his first season, and arguably was a big reason why they didn't win the flag in 2023. Will Ashcroft wasn't there, and he was such a big difference in 2024.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be used quite early, but again, you could be right that they may want to hold him off, considering the depth of Brisbane is quite big now. Obviously, we saw that throughout the season. They had to use a lot of their depth, and now those players have got those 10 games of experience, or 20 games of experience, or just a little bit more to play more midfield. So I don't mind Ashcroft. I think he is a little bit of a watch, but I lock him in for now. And then Josh Smiley, I mean, Richmond are going to give games to him, obviously.
Yeah.
You're ruck, so what are you looking at?
I've went Darcy Cameron and Tom De Koning.
So you've gone with me, Tom De Koning. I think he's almost a lock on him. I feel like unless you're going to go Cherry and then another million ruckman, that could be an option there. Darcy Cameron's a bit of an interesting one though.
I just wanted a bit of difference. I think he normally last year he averaged 96. It's not like the high 100s, but I'm avoiding Marshall and Tristan Jerry at the moment. They're too high. I know that, especially. One of them's not going to be start the season as great as they finished it. So
who's that?
Well, but one of either both of them. One of Sherry.
Well, I think Marshall. He did play a little bit of forward pre-season so far. Now I think a lot of that is to just give some more extra ruck experience to a couple of the younger guys like Max Heath, and then they've also got another guy who potentially could be picked in if he gets picked up as an SSP player. I can't remember his name. Someone said it in the comments last week. I can't remember his name, so I'm sorry I missed that out. But he was definitely a look at. And they look like if he picks him up, he could potentially play early. So he would be an option as a rookie, or as a reserve, sorry. But yeah, I don't... Cameron's a bit of an interesting one. What's his ownership so far? I mean, obviously it's very early on, but what's his ownership?
1.7.
Yeah, so it's quite low. So could be an option out of the blue, but I don't mind it. And then finally, your forward line.
So we've got Jason Horne-Francis, Isaac Rankin, Filippo, Bailey Smith, Caleb Daniel, and Joe Berry.
So you've got 5 of the 6 forwards that I've got, which are obviously the top 5. You're going with Joe Berry. I don't mind that option. A lot of people have been talking about Elijah Hewitt. So he's obviously for West Coast. He's a forward mid. He is priced at $3.32. He's been a very decent recruit, but just been ravaged by injury. They're saying he's a massive pre-season. So that's my option for a forward at the moment. But Joe Berry, obviously Port Adelaide, he could definitely... It looks like he's going to play early if he's fit enough and ready to go. He looks like a small forward that could get some touches. There's been a lot of great talk about him. Port Adelaide were happy to get him when they did. So I don't mind that option.
That's why I think that he's a good option, for the fact is that, Port Adelaide wanted him so badly. They got him. They've compared him to the Robbie Gray, Zach Butters type. Yeah. So...
We saw how good they, obviously Zach Butters' more recent memory had a very good start to his career as playing as that small forward sort of role and then playing a little bit of midfield as well. But then finally, you got your interchange. So what are you looking at? Just go through all of them, you might as well.
El Halley.
Yep.
Josh Gipkus. DiMatteo.
DiMatteo, yep. That's the one for Collingwood.
Yep. Barrett for Port Adelaide, Tom Campbell, Ethan Reid and Caden Cleary, and Josh Fay is my utility.
Now, do you just like Josh Fay because of all the stuff he did at the after party? Is that like that's your option?
No, because not last year, the year before, he actually came in because he was dominating the VFL 2 years ago, and that's when he got his shot. And last year, he just got ravaged by injury.
So you do realise he's got a 4-week ban though.
Yeah, but who knows?
I just
put him there for the moment. It's just like, well,
yeah. So at the moment, that's basically just filler for most of them.
Yeah. Well,
so El Harley and Gibcus, I think El Harley's a very big player for most people. Gibcus, obviously, there's so much talk about the guy that Richmond want him to play every game of the season, but he's been ravaged by injury yet again.
That's the only reason I've got him is because if he's there for round one, he will play.
Yeah.
They are that they got so high hopes on him that he will play.
Yeah.
The other ones, like looking at like everyone else on my bench, you got them like Tom Campbell 316. So if like say a rookie or say like Elijah Hewitt plays round one, I've got enough to get rid of him and get rid of Joe Barry and grab Hewitt for round one. So Hewitt and Fay are both not on base price, so I can do that.
Yeah, you're expecting that those sort of types are going to, at least average is 60, like 50, 60, hopefully get in, and then they can just go up to at least 450 or something, 500, and then you can use them in round 7 or 8, upgrade to a better option or downgrade to a lower price, so then you can play someone else. Yeah. So that's obviously what you want to try to do with your reserves. You want to get players that play early. This is obviously a very early on. So, you want to track people's pre-seasons, just have a quick look around. You don't really have to do a lot of research, but, if you look in the AFL app, eventually you'll know some things about how pre-seasons are going, or just subscribe to the channel because we're always on it, obviously. But yeah, that's your team. I don't mind it. I think there's a little bit of differences. There's obviously a bit of a difference between both of our teams. I don't mind it. Again, we've kind of looked at that forward line is going to be an interesting one. Like, you've only really got 10 options really for the forward line, I think. Like, you're not going to pick a lot of the players at a higher price because they're just not going to, like Jeremy Cameron, depends really on Geelong's early season, and it depends on if his form's going to be good either.
If they were playing West Coast week 1, I'd probably pick him for week 1 because he dominate, because he always does against West Coast.
Yeah.
But there's other options out there that there's a lot of, to be honest, in the forward line, there is a lot of mid-price options that you can use to...
I think that's where you save your money.
Yeah, that's
where you use it on your defence and your midfield.
Yeah, because your mid-price players in your forward line, by round 5, 6... will gain money. They all will gain money because they will average over 85, 90. Hopefully. Knock on wood. So by round 6, if they've bottomed out, which is possible, by then you'll have the DPPs come into play, and then you'll have a good look at who is going to be performing well.
Yeah, who's going to be the seasonal forward line. And then also, players going to get new positions as well by round 6, 7, 8, whatever. All right, guys, that's pretty much all the AFL talk we have for this week. As we get closer to the season, hopefully there'll be more news other than us talking about AFL fantasy. I know that's probably not everyone's cup of tea. I'm sure people would watch Supercoach and stuff as well, but I don't understand the rules of it, a lot of it, the scoring of it anyway. A bit of a moron. Anyway, let's get into a bit of world sport. We try to get into a bit of world sport every single week, as long as we're under about an hour, under 45 minutes or so, we'll chuck in a bit of world sport. And we'll first start with the Premier League. So, Liverpool have run away with the league at this moment. I think they've got it locked in, to be honest. You don't want to say it just yet in case they choke it, like they're pretty prone to do. But at this stage on the table, Liverpool have a lead by 8 points with a game in hand. They are 45 points at this stage. Nottingham Forest are 8 points behind in second spot with a couple of teams behind them still to play. But I mean, what a season Nottingham Forest have had. They've already won more games than they did last season in half a season.
Well, they got more points. They had like 32, 34 last season.
Well, they almost got relegated.
Yeah.
They almost got relegated.
Thanks to the breaches they had last season.
Yeah, well, they almost did. But they survived, and now led by Chris Wood, Gibbs White, Hudson-Odoi, a lot of great players that have were pretty good at their club, like their original club, like Arsenal for Gibbs White and Hudson-Odoi for Chelsea. they've done really well when they've moved to Nottingham now. Chris Wood as well, played for a couple of clubs before he moved to Nottingham Forest. New Zealander, of course, we can claim him, can't we?
Yeah.
Like the Pavlova and stuff. Arsenal are in third place on 36 points. Chelsea are on 35 points in fourth place. Both those teams at this stage are recording this on Monday. So there's still a couple of games. They've still got to play tomorrow, so you guys will know the results by then. Manchester City just holding in there. They're in fifth spot. They are 14 points off the pace. So
Still got a chance.
Still got a chance. Bournemouth are in sixth. Not really being talked about a lot because of Nottingham Forest season, but they lost Dominic Solanke. Everyone thought they could drop down, and now they're in sixth spot. They're in front of Tottenham. They're doing pretty well. Newcastle are in seventh. Fulham, they won to Chelsea last week. They're doing well. They're in a pretty decent spot right now. Aston Villa are in ninth. That was interesting because they were in the top four. I don't know. I kind of really wanted them to do decently this season. They're in the Champions League. They're doing well in the Champions League. But yeah, they're currently in ninth. Brighton are in 10th. Tottenham... I feel sorry for Ange.
Yeah, it's getting a little heated, isn't it?
Yeah. They're in 11th. I'll be interested to see if he does get sacked, if he could join another Premier League club.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think he's done that bad. I mean, I think...
He's had a lot of problems go their way with the injuries that they've had, but...
I mean, they didn't have a striker in his first season. Now they've got one, and they've just got a lot of injuries on other parts, but, they're not doing that well. They don't have their best goalkeeper in either. Vicario, it's obviously been forced for quite a while now. But they just keep on losing games and dropping points against teams they shouldn't. Like, they dropped points against Wolves. They should have won that.
Yeah.
I know Wolves have done a little bit better since they got their new manager, but you can't be losing points against a team in the bottom four.
No.
Anyway, Brentford are in 12th, who have done really well at home, but can't win away. Can't even score points away. 13th is West Ham after a pretty decent performance last game. Manchester United are in 14th. I feel so sorry for them. Not really get fucked.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Like, they thought, we'll bring in...
Well, I mean, at least they beat Manchester City. Let's just put that out there. Good on them for beating them.
But they beat that, yeah. They think it's going to be an interesting transfer window for them.
Well, they think that Rashford could go and Garnacho could also be on the move. I think they'll hold Garnacho. I think Rashford's had a lot of opportunity now, and he just can't get going.
Yeah.
I don't know who he'd go to, but just this point, I think that Rashford's got a lot of... They've just got to find a way to score, basically. I mean, they've got a lot of goals from players that aren't their strikers. Like Rasmus Højlund hasn't scored a lot this season for Manchester United. Garnacho's had some moments, but now he's even on the bench. He's not even in the best 11. Yeah. Rashford's kind of in the same boat. So, I don't know. At this stage, I think that Manchester United... the manager won't go anywhere. I think he'll stay for the season unless they're not going to get relegated. But, they're what... 8 points away from relegation, and they'll find a way. They'll win 5 or 6 games in a 10-week period, and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a bit of a down period right now. Crystal Palace are in 15th with 20 points. Everton are on 17 points in 16th. Wolves are on 16 points in 17th, and then we get to the relegation zone. And unfortunately, it looks like we may have another relegation battle where all teams who got promoted get relegated again. Leicester City are on 14 points in 18th spot, so 2 points away from safety. Ipswich Town, who I hope can try and get out of there, but I think it's going to be a bit hard. They're on 12 points right now in 19th, and then down the bottom, Southampton, almighty rock bottom, and are on track for...
They are absolutely horrible at this season.
They're on track for the worst ever season in Premier League history. Obviously, at this stage, if you don't know, that's owned by Derby County. That was done, I think, in the early 2000s, I think it was. That they're doing it worse right now than them.
Yeah.
And interesting what they do in the transfer window, but not really looking hopeful. But looking at the results that we've seen so far this match week, whatever you call it, West Ham got smashed 5-0 to Liverpool. Liverpool just had a field day. Tottenham drew 2-2 to Wolverhampton, not good enough. Fulham and Bournemouth 2-2 draw after Evan Linson, I think it was, scored a leveller against Fulham to get them back level, which was a really good job from them because they looked like they were going to lose. Nottingham Forest won 2-0 away against Everton. Nottingham just continued to power on. Crystal Palace won 2-1 over Southampton after it looked a little bit shaky at first. And Manchester City, despite a not hugely convincing performance, they did get the win over Leicester City 2-0. But moving forward, there are a couple of games to go in the rest of the match day. It is Aston Villa up against Brighton, Ipswich against Chelsea, and United up against Newcastle. So that's tomorrow's games. And then on Thursday, so yeah, for Australia, there is a game, Brentford versus Arsenal as well. So a couple of games coming up. Hopefully Chelsea can continue their form after dropping that game against Fulham. Wasn't good enough, really. But I do want to take a look at this because I don't know if you follow much of the second league of the Championship for England, but it looks like the three teams that got, almost three of the four teams that got demoted last season. So who got demoted last season from the Premier League? It was Sheffield United, Burnley, and who was the other one? It was Luton Town. So Luton Town are in 19th spot.
Yeah, that was always going to happen.
Yeah, they've dropped right off. I thought a lot of it's reason why they were dropping off in the Premier League. Like, I mean, they almost survived. I mean, they didn't almost survive, but they were close. They were the highest team there. I thought they were going for the transfer window to then have a good team to then go back into the Championship and then jump back in. But they're not anywhere near it. However, Leeds, Sheffield United, and Burnley are the top three teams in the Championship. Leeds obviously are a team that should have really made it back into the Premier League, but lost it to Ipswich Town and didn't do well in the Championship, and they're in huge financial debt if they don't get back into the Premier League next season. Because obviously, if you don't know, players' salaries drop quite drastically when you drop back into the Championship. So they've got a lot of players that they're paying overs for to keep them in the Championship, so then they can jump back into the Prem.
Yeah.
But they're still struggling. Leeds thought they were going to get back into the Premier League last season, but couldn't. So they sit in the top spot by a couple of points at this stage, but Sheffield United and Burnley. So they are expected at this stage, it's still early on, there's only still half a season to go, basically. But at this stage, they have to, at this point, it looks like it could be the same three teams jumping back into the Premier League, which I think is a problem for the Championship, and the Premier League to an extent. Like, the same three teams may drop again, and pretty similar teams are going to go back up. I mean, it gets to a point where, hopefully, where teams that are just under them, like Sunderland, who were up the top for a while, Blackburn, Middlesbrough, Watford, West Brom, Swansea, Bristol, Sheffield Wednesday, Norwich, these teams that not so much Norwich, I mean, they're a bit of a yo-yo team, but other teams as well, but they just can't get into the Premier League because the teams that do get into the Prem, like the Leeds, the Sheffields, Uniteds and Burnleys, they get a salary to, help them stay into the Prem, but they don't get enough. So then they inevitably drop back into the Championship and then just dominate through there. Yeah. So I think there does, because obviously soccer is definitely run by the top owners of these teams now. Like, you look at teams like Manchester City, way back, they obviously got bought out when they were a pretty low side. They got bought out, obviously bought all these massive players and then won the Premier League.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, you can look at Newcastle, who were we're in the Championship 5 years ago. And Aston Villa as well, bought out, got it back up, bought all these players, and now they're a top team in the Premier League. So it is a little bit disappointing. I don't think there should be salary caps like there is in the AFL. I think that would make it, it'd be stupid now. They can't do it now, it's too far. But there needs to be a bit more money in the Championship to keep these teams either competing against these higher teams like the Leeds and the Sheffields. So then it's a little bit more of a competition, because nearly every single year we see in the Championship that if you're in the Championship and you just came back from the Prem, most likely you're going to be able to jump back in.
Yeah.
And you only see maybe one team different every year. At the moment, Luton Town, they're down the bottom. But the other two, they're right up the top. The other two are right up the top, almost destined to make it back into the Premier League.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bit crap. But anyway, let's move on to a bit of NFL before we end the episode. So the NFL, the Falcons, the last time since we talked about them, they were almost locked into the playoffs. I think we did talk about them last episode.
Yeah.
They've kind of fallen off the pace, and now with 2 minutes to go in a game, we'll probably be able to talk about it when this game ends, because my brother's kind of keeping an eye on it as we're talking. But other than that, the Bucs won against the Panthers, so the Falcons have to win this game or else they're gone, basically. Looking at it, though, the Vikings now jump into their top spot now in the NFC after their win. So despite Detroit being one of the best teams in the NFC throughout the whole season, unfortunately, the same team that's in their division may well just jump them and knock them out from that top spot.
Injuries haven't helped Detroit late in the season. And,
yeah. Well, at this stage though, the Lions will be playing against the Bucks. It could be either the Bucks or the Falcons. And I feel like even though you're the team that's away, you're going to be going in heavy favourites.
Yes.
Whoever you are. But again, that doesn't always mean you're going to win. I do remember a couple of seasons ago when Dallas had the same run. I think it was against the Bucks that they had, and they lost it because it was still the Bucks' home game, despite being a much better team throughout the regular season. Yeah. So at this stage, the Vikings and Lions are both locked in their spots. So have the Eagles and the Packers. The Rams, Buccaneers, who are in 3rd and 4th seeds, are not locked in just yet, but they're very well close. With I think there's only one game to go in the season. And the Commanders, who are currently playing against the Falcons. So if the Commanders can lock this game down, they almost lock in their spot in playoffs. So that's the only thing really keeping them away from it. At the moment, they do lead against the Falcons 24-17. So come on, fucking find a way, boys. Find a way. Looking at it now, though, the only teams that can make playoffs on the NFC side are the Falcons and the Seahawks. So the Seahawks can still make it with the Rams there as well. They do have they have one more game. The Rams are on a 5-game winning streak, so they're in pretty good form. That's the only problem with them, and they have one more game to go in the season. And the Rams and the Seahawks play against each other. So that's going to be a massive finish to the season for them. And then looking at the AFC side, the Chiefs just keep on winning, and it's really getting boring at this point, I'm going to be honest. Come on. They only lost one game in the regular season. The Bills are second. They've locked in. Ravens are locked in as well. Texans are locked in, so they're the top 4. Steelers locked in for playoffs, and the Chargers are as well. However, the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Bengals are going to be fighting for their spot in the playoffs. And the Broncos got a... That was the Broncos game when they beat the Bengals yesterday.
No, the Bengals won.
So the Bengals won to keep their season alive, even though the Broncos almost won it. I think they almost got it there with a catch in the end. Was that called a catch in the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the one that was called a catch. It was in the end zone. It was a 2v1. He went back with the flight, caught it, but then in overtime they won the game, the Bengals. So the Bengals kept their season alive. The Dolphins have won their last 2 games. Bengals have won their last 4. Broncos have lost their last 2. So going into that final game, it's going to be very, very interesting. Looking at their results, though, let's see who they're playing in the last week, the last game of the season. So it looks like still scrolling. Bengals play the Steelers. It's going to be a hard game. Who knows who's going to win that? Dolphins play the Jets. They get lucky. They beat the Jets, and then the Broncos play the Chiefs. That's tough. Yeah, playing against the Chiefs.
The thing is about that, they can't lose top seed. So
Chiefs
they may rest a few. Patty Mahomes has had a few knocks over the course of the season. They might want to just ice him up for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, for the playoffs.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows? They already got the week off, so it's not like they've already. So that will also come into play.
Yeah, I think maybe they will, but even so, they're still 15-1 for the whole season. So it's going to be still pretty hard for them. But yeah, there's still the Falcons game. They've got a minute and a half to go. Throws it long. That was caught. Fuck yes. Falcons take the catch. They're a chance here. We'll live record it. But that's pretty much all the NFL stuff, guys. So I think we'll pretty much end the episode there. So Falcons take the catch. They could very well win it. That could be good. You guys will know by then. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to first episode of the year. Join the AFL Fantasy League, guys, if you haven't already. The link. Well, the link I'll put in the description anyway, if I remember. But the code is on the screen on the left-hand side. We'll get it there in a minute. There, probably. Yep, I think that's pretty good. If you are listening to it, it's TY2. MXKNE is the code if you want to join our AFL Fantasy League. It is an open league, so there's spots galore. We'll join that in. We'll probably be covering a lot of AFL Fantasy information over the next few weeks as well, just to have something to talk about in the episode when there isn't a lot of footy talk, but we obviously like our AFL Fantasy as well. And I'm sure with the positional stuff, I don't know too much about the prices, but you can probably link them to Supercoach as well, a lot of the prices and the positional stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much all we've got for this episode, guys. So if you did enjoy this episode 94, then make sure to drop us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And of course, make sure to leave us 5 stars and sure to follow so you're notified on the podcast every single week. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next week.
See you later, guys.